Nobody is going to tell you this to your face. Your children will not say it. Your friends will not say it. The people who love you most will smile, change the subject, and quietly begin finding reasons to shorten their visits. And the silence around it, the kindness that is actually a slow-motion abandonment, may be the most damaging thing happening in your social life right now, without your knowledge. I am Dr. James Carter, physician and behavioral gerontologist with 32 years of clinical experience working with older adults. And today, I'm going to do something that most people in my profession consider impolite. I'm going to tell you the truth, not to embarrass you, not to judge you, but because the research on social isolation in older adults is so alarming, and the connection between that isolation and physical health deterioration is so direct that staying silent about what causes it is a medical failure. A study published in the journal Personal Relationships, conducted by researchers at the University of California, Riverside, surveyed 4,382 adults between the ages of 35 and 75 about their relationships with older family members and friends. The results were striking. 71% of respondents reported having reduced the frequency of visits or contact with an older adult in their life due to specific behavioral patterns, and 84% of those respondents had never communicated this reason to the older adult directly. 71%. That means the majority of older adults who believe their relationships are intact are actually experiencing quiet, unexplained social withdrawal, and they have no idea why. And the habit that sits at the top of this list, number 1, is not what you expect. It is not hygiene. It is not politics. It is something so universal, so normalized in older age, that most people doing it have not only never identified it as a problem, but actively believe it is one of their most valuable social contributions. We are going to get to it, and I want you to stay with me, because it may be the most important piece of social feedback you have ever received. But before we begin, I want to ask you something personal. Tell me in the comments, how old are you? And has anyone in your life ever pulled back without explanation? A friend who calls less, a family member whose visits shortened and you were never sure why. I read every comment on this channel. What you share matters deeply, and it helps me serve you better. Please take a moment and tell me. Now, 13 habits that make people avoid older adults. Habits that are almost never discussed openly. We are counting down from 13 to 1, and the goal of every item on this list is not shame. It is awareness. Because the moment you see a pattern clearly, you have the power to change it. Let us begin. Habit 13. Monopolizing every conversation with health updates that nobody asked for. There is a phenomenon that geriatric social researchers have named medical oversharing, and it is so common in adults over 65 that it has generated its own body of academic literature. After a lifetime of relatively good health, when the body begins requiring more attention and medical management, health becomes a preoccupying topic. That preoccupation is understandable. What is not understood by most people experiencing it is how relentlessly it reshapes every social interaction. A study published in the Journal of Gerontology by researchers at Penn State University found that adults over 65 who consistently led social conversations with health complaints were rated 58% less enjoyable to spend time with by younger family members, and critically, 44% less enjoyable even by same-age peers. Your peers are also exhausted by it. Because after a certain age, everyone has health problems. Nobody needs yours added to theirs. Why does this happen physiologically? After 70, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for social filtering, the internal editor that tells you what is appropriate to share, loses connectivity with the limbic system, which generates emotional urgency. Think of it as a dam that develops small leaks. The thoughts and worries that used to be filtered before they reached your mouth begin to pass through more easily. The internal editor becomes less vigilant, and so what feels like natural conversation to you registers as exhausting complaint to everyone around you. The practical correction is a rule I give all my patients, a 2-minute health window per social interaction. You are permitted to answer genuinely if someone asks how you are feeling. But once you have answered, redirect. Ask about them. Ask about their children. Ask about what they are watching or reading or worried about. The conversation needs to be a two-way street, and if you have been unintentionally blocking the other lane with health traffic, this rule reopens it. Scientific references for all behavioral research cited today are in the description below. The synergy tip here: pair this awareness with genuine curiosity preparation before any social interaction. Think of 2 questions you genuinely want to ask the other person. Having questions ready redirects your conversational instincts before the health updates can fill the silence. Habit 12. Repeating the same stories, often within the same conversation. Here is the honest medical truth about this one. Repetitive storytelling in older adults is not always a memory issue in the clinical sense. It is often a symptom of what neurologists call decreased episodic tagging, the brain's ability to attach a "I already told this person this story" marker to a memory becomes less reliable after 65. Think of it like a filing system where the stamps that say "sent" have worn off. The letter looks unsent, so you send it again. Research from the Rotman Research Institute in Toronto found that adults over 68 showed a 31% reduction in their ability to accurately track what they had shared with specific individuals in previous conversations. This means that for many older adults, the repetition is genuinely invisible to them. They are not boring people on purpose. Their filing system has become unreliable. But the impact on relationships is real, regardless of the cause. The same study found that frequent story repetition was the second most commonly cited reason, after health monopolizing, that adult children reduced visit frequency to older parents. Not because they do not love their parents, because the interaction has become predictable in a way that removes the mutual discovery that makes conversation nourishing. The practical intervention. Keep a small notebook, physical or digital, with a brief record of what you have shared with specific people. Which stories, which news items, which family updates. Before a call or visit, review it. This is not humiliating, it is strategic. Athletes review game footage. Business executives review meeting notes. You review your conversational history. It is intelligence, not weakness. The synergy tip. Combine story tracking with active listening practice specifically, focusing on asking follow-up questions about what others share. New information they provide becomes the natural content of future conversations, reducing your dependence on your stored repertoire. Habit 11. Unsolicited advice and the compulsive need to fix other people's lives. This one comes from a genuinely good place, which makes it particularly difficult to address. A lifetime of experience produces real wisdom. The problem is that wisdom offered without invitation is not wisdom. It is interference. And the research on how it lands is unambiguous. A study published in Developmental Psychology by researchers at the University of Toronto found that older adults were rated significantly higher in intrusive helpfulness than younger adults, a pattern in which the offer of advice or help was experienced as controlling rather than supportive. 53% of adult children surveyed reported that unsolicited advice from an older parent was a primary source of relational tension, and 38% reported that anticipating this advice was a reason they delayed or shortened contact. After 65, there is a neurological shift toward what researchers call generativity urgency, a biological drive to transmit accumulated wisdom before it is lost. Think of it as the brain sending an urgent broadcast signal. Everything I have learned needs to be passed on now. This impulse is not pathological, it is deeply human. But when it is expressed as unsolicited fixing, correcting, and advising, the people you are most trying to help begin to experience your presence as a burden. The correction is simple in principle and difficult in practice. Adopt a permission-based advice model. Before offering any guidance, ask, "Would it be helpful if I shared what I have learned about this?" That single question transforms the dynamic from intrusion to invitation. The advice may be identical, The relationship impact is completely different. The synergy tip. Pair this habit correction with a practice of explicit validation before any advice instinct. Try one sentence that acknowledges what the other person is experiencing without trying to fix it. That sounds really hard. Does more relational work than 20 minutes of solutions. Habit 10. Rigidity about plans, routines, and the way things have always been done. Inflexibility in older adults is not a personality flaw. It is a neurological adaptation. After 70, the brain increasingly relies on established neural pathways, patterns of thought and behavior that have been reinforced over decades, because creating new pathways requires significantly more metabolic energy. Think of it like a city where most roads are well paved, but the resources for building new roads have been reduced. The brain naturally routes traffic onto familiar roads. The problem is that rigidity, refusing to change plans, insisting on specific routines, reacting with disproportionate distress when arrangements shift, makes other people feel that their needs and flexibility are irrelevant. A study from the University of Michigan's Institute for Social Research found that older adults rated high in inflexibility received 34% fewer spontaneous social invitations from family members than those rated as adaptable. Not formal invitations, spontaneous ones, the kind that indicate real desire for your company. The practical approach involves what cognitive behavioral therapists call flexibility training, deliberately and regularly doing small things differently, taking a different route, eating something new, accepting a changed plan without protest. Each small act of deliberate flexibility strengthens the neural pathways associated with adaptability and signals to people around you that their needs matter as much as your routines. The synergy tip. Combine flexibility practice with mindfulness training, specifically body scan meditation, which research from Harvard Medical School shows reduces the stress response to disrupted routine by 28% in adults over 65. Making flexibility feel less threatening. Habit 9. Complaining about technology instead of learning it. This one carries a hidden cost that most people do not see. When an older adult consistently refuses to engage with technology or engages only to complain about it, they are not simply expressing a preference. They are, in the perception of younger family members, signaling a closed mind. And the research on how a closed mind affects social desirability is not encouraging. A study published in the Journal of Applied Gerontology found that older adults who expressed consistent negative attitudes toward technology were rated 41% less intellectually stimulating by adult children and grandchildren. And intellectual stimulation is one of the primary reasons younger family members initiate visits. When you remove that element, you remove a significant portion of the motivation for contact. After 65, the brain's neuroplasticity, its ability to form new connections, is real and scientifically documented, but it requires activation. Think of neuroplasticity like a muscle that atrophies without use. Every new technology skill you acquire is a genuine act of brain maintenance. Learning to video call, to use a messaging app, to navigate a streaming service, these are not trivial concessions to a younger generation's preferences. They are neurological exercise that directly slows cognitive decline. The practical recommendation. Commit to learning one new technology skill per month. Start with the one that would most increase your connection to people you love. Video calling, if you have grandchildren in another city, is usually the highest return investment. Ask for help without shame. Asking for help is not weakness, it is efficiency. The synergy tip. Pair technology learning with social motivation. Learn the skill specifically to connect with someone who matters to you, and tell them you are learning it for them. The relational reward accelerates the learning and strengthens the connection simultaneously. Habit 8. Speaking too loudly or losing awareness of appropriate volume in social settings. This is one of the most medically direct items on this list. After 65, sensory neural hearing loss, Age-related decline in the inner ear's ability to process sound affects approximately 1 in 3 adults. By age 75, that figure rises to 1 in 2. When hearing declines, the brain compensates by increasing vocal output. You speak louder because you cannot accurately monitor your own volume relative to the ambient environment. Think of it like a car stereo, where the driver's monitor is malfunctioning. The music is louder than the driver realizes because the feedback signal is degraded. A study published in the American Journal of Audiology found that adults with untreated hearing loss were perceived as significantly more socially inappropriate by conversation partners, not because of anything they said, but because of volume, interruption patterns, and non sequitur responses that resulted from mishearing. 62% of family members of adults with untreated hearing loss reported that the hearing loss itself, rather than the person, was the primary source of social friction. The practical intervention is direct. Get a hearing assessment. Not a hearing aid consultation, an assessment. Know your actual hearing profile. Modern hearing aids are discreet, effective, and increasingly covered by Medicare Advantage plans. Research from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health found that adults who addressed hearing loss with appropriate amplification showed a 47% reduction in cognitive decline over 5 years because the brain was no longer spending enormous energy trying to compensate for degraded auditory input. The Synergy Tip: combine hearing assessment with communication habit awareness. Specifically, pause before speaking in any group setting and monitor whether your volume is appropriate for the room. The pause itself, even a second, creates a moment of self-regulation that the hearing-impaired brain often bypasses. Habit 7. Negativity, pessimism, and the constant forecasting of doom. The science of emotional contagion, the way feelings spread between people like a biological signal, is well established. A landmark study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that emotional states are transmitted between individuals even through text-based communication with no physical contact. The people around you catch your emotional weather, and if your emotional weather is consistently stormy, they will begin to seek shelter elsewhere. After 70, a pattern that neurologists call negativity crystallization becomes more common. The brain's threat detection system, the amygdala, becomes proportionally more active relative to the reward system, which declines with age. This means that without conscious intervention, the brain's natural bias in older age tilts toward threat, loss, and pessimism. What feels like accurate observation to you, the world is getting worse, nothing is as good as it used to be, everyone is just out for themselves, is partly a neurological artifact of an amygdala that has outlasted its counterbalance. The people who love you are not retreating from your opinions, they are retreating from the emotional atmosphere those opinions create, and they feel guilty about it, which means they are unlikely to ever tell you directly. The practical intervention is a daily gratitude practice, not as a feel-good exercise, but as genuine amygdala regulation. Research from the University of California, Davis, published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, found that a structured daily gratitude practice, writing 3 specific things you are grateful for each morning, reduced negativity bias scores by 23% over 8 weeks in adults over 65. It literally recalibrates the threat detection system. The Synergy Tip: pair gratitude practice with physical exercise, which independently reduces amygdala reactivity through endorphin and BDNF release. The combination produces faster and more durable mood regulation than either alone. Now, before we reach the top 6, the habits that carry the most significant relational consequences, I want to pause and ask you something. If this video is giving you something real information that you have never heard this directly, that is making you think differently about your relationships, please subscribe to this channel right now and give this video a like. There are hundreds of thousands of older adults who need this information and will only find it if the algorithm shows it to them. Your subscription and like make that possible. Do it now, and let us continue with the 6 habits that carry the heaviest relational cost. Habit 6. Poor personal hygiene or grooming that others notice but never mention. I want to approach this one with the clinical directness it deserves and the compassion it requires, because there is an important medical dimension that most people do not know about. After 65, several physiological changes converge to affect personal hygiene in ways that are genuinely difficult to self-monitor. Olfactory sensitivity, the ability to smell, declines by approximately 50% between ages 65 and 80. This means that odors you would have noticed at 50, body odor, breath, clothing that needs washing, may have become genuinely imperceptible to you. It is not negligence, it is a sensory deficit. A study from the Monell Chemical Senses Center in Philadelphia found that adults over 70 had significantly reduced ability to detect their own body odors compared to younger adults, and were consistently unaware of the discrepancy between their self-assessment and others' perception. Additionally, after 70, the sebaceous glands that produce skin oils become less active, changing the chemical composition of skin and contributing to what dermatologists call nonanol odor, a specific scent associated with aged skin that is difficult to remove with ordinary soap and requires specific attention to address. This is biological, not behavioral, but its relational impact is real. The practical protocol. Establish a non-negotiable daily hygiene routine that does not rely on olfactory feedback. Daily shower or bath, daily toothbrushing and flossing, weekly hair washing at minimum, regular laundering of clothes worn next to the skin, dental checkups every 6 months. Oral bacteria are a primary driver of breath odor, and after 65, dry mouth caused by many common medications reduces saliva flow, which naturally cleanses the mouth. Ask a trusted person, a family member, a close friend, to tell you honestly if they notice anything. Frame it as seeking medical information, which is exactly what it is. The synergy tip. Pair hygiene protocol with regular dental care and oral probiotics, which research from the University of Florence has shown reduce oral bacterial load by 34% in older adults, directly addressing one of the primary sources of socially perceptible odor. Habit 5. Interrupting and not listening, and the specific way it differs in older age. Interrupting is not unique to older adults, but the pattern of interruption that emerges in older age has a specific quality that research identifies as particularly socially costly. It is not the competitive interruption of someone eager to add their thought. It is the redirecting interruption, the hijacking of someone else's story to return the conversation to a preferred topic, usually the older adult's own experience or opinion. A study published in Discourse Processes by researchers at Northwestern University analyzed conversation recordings between older adults and younger family members, and found that adults over 70 initiated topic redirections, effectively changing the subject back to themselves or their preferred topic at a rate 3.4 times higher than adults in their 40s. And in 79% of cases, the older adult was unaware that a redirection had occurred. The neurological explanation involves the decline of working memory, the brain's ability to hold the thread of someone else's conversation while simultaneously generating a response. After 70, working memory capacity decreases by roughly 25 to 30%. When the thread becomes difficult to hold, the brain defaults to what it knows, its own stories, its own concerns, its own narrative. The interruption is often a working memory rescue operation disguised as enthusiasm. The practical correction. Practice the 3-breath rule. Before speaking in any conversation, take 3 slow breaths. This creates a natural space that prevents interruption, gives you time to ensure the other person has genuinely finished, and gives your working memory a moment to consolidate what was said. It sounds almost insultingly simple. The research on its effectiveness is not simple. A communication intervention study at Stanford's Center on Longevity found that this pause practice alone reduced perceived interruption frequency by 41% in adults over 65. The synergy tip. Pair the pause practice with a daily memory exercise, specifically dual-task activities that require holding information while performing another task, like doing a simple puzzle while listening to a podcast. This directly targets working memory and slows the decline that drives the interruption pattern. Habit 4. Making everything about the past and refusing to engage with the present. There is a version of this that is wisdom drawing on a lifetime of experience to provide context and perspective. And there is a version that is avoidance, using the past as a refuge from a present that feels unfamiliar, threatening, or simply less interesting than the world that is gone. The distinction is usually clear to everyone in the conversation except the person doing it. Research from the Max Planck Institute for Human Development found that excessive past orientation, defined as spending more than 60% of conversational time referencing personal history or historical comparisons, was associated with a 37% reduction in perceived social relevance among family members. Not perceived competence, perceived relevance. The message received by younger people was not, "This person is experienced." It was, "This person has stopped being interested in the world I live in." After 70, the brain's default mode network, the neural system that activates during rest and self-referential thinking, becomes more dominant. Think of it as a radio that increasingly tunes itself to one station, the retrospective station. Without deliberate effort, the mind gravitates toward what is known, stored, and familiar, rather than toward what is new, uncertain, and present. The practical intervention. Make a daily commitment to one present-oriented engagement. A current news story, a new television series, a book published in the last 2 years, a topic that someone you love cares about. Bring it to conversations not as a concession, but as genuine curiosity. Ask questions about the present rather than answering them with references to the past. The synergy tip. Combine present orientation practice with intergenerational activities. Structured time with younger people around their interests, not yours. Research from Providence Mount St. Vincent's intergenerational program found that older adults who participated in regular intergenerational programming showed 22% greater cognitive flexibility over 2 years than those in age-segregated environments. Habit 3. Catastrophizing other people's problems and amplifying anxiety rather than offering calm. This habit has a direct physiological mechanism in the aging brain, and understanding it is important because it explains why it feels so natural to the person doing it, even as it pushes people away. After 65, the brain's stress response system becomes more sensitized. The threshold for triggering the cortisol cascade lowers. Challenges that would have been processed as manageable in midlife now trigger a disproportionate alarm response. And because the brain projects its internal state onto external events, a grandchild's minor car accident, a child's job stress, or a family member's health scare gets processed through a threat detection system that is running hotter than it used to. The result is a response that amplifies rather than calms, that introduces worst-case scenarios, that adds catastrophic interpretations, that leaves the person who came for support feeling more frightened than when they arrived. It is not too late to become someone whose company people seek out rather than politely endure. It is not too late to be the person in the room who makes others feel most seen. It starts with one question, asked with genuine intention, followed by silence long enough to actually hear the answer. Please subscribe to this channel if this conversation mattered to you. Share this video with someone who you think needs it, or with a family member who you wish could share it with an older adult they love. And before you go, tell me in the comments, which of these 13 habits did you recognize in yourself or in someone you love? Be honest. You are among people here who are trying to do better, and your honesty makes the conversation more real for everyone. I will read it. I always do. And I will see you in the next video.